This is Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio, one of South Africa's greatest riders. And there's no doubt about it, she is one of the women's peloton's finest climbers.
Here's Moolman-Pasio starting to crack Van Vleuten on the climb.
With over a decade in the pro ranks and now riding for IAG Insurance Soldal Quickstep, I wanted to pick her brains on how she became one of the world's best climbers. And hopefully even pick up some tips of my own, because let's be honest, I need it. I'm definitely not the best climber in the world. So today I'm going to meet Ashleigh on one of her training rides not far from Girona. A cyclist paradise, beautiful views and great roads. So let's go find her. Can't wait. Hi Ashleigh, it's great to meet you.
Manon, great to meet you too.
Well, thanks for having me today. What are we up to?
Well, I have some climbing intervals to do, so I hope you're ready.
Sounds great. I mean, I'll give it a go. I'll try and hang on. Right,
cool.
Should we get going?
Let's get going.
To the hills. Oh, this way. Okay, first question, Ashleigh. How did you know climbing was your niche? Was it something you were kind of born with, you got on a bike and you're like, yes, I'm a climber? Or was it something that you kind of formed into?
No, it was something that I realized pretty early on. So I actually only got into cycling later in life, in my early 20s, and it was Carl, my husband, who recognized my talent. And it was actually on like a holiday, our first holiday together back at his hometown, that I joined him and his dad riding, and we went up a really steep climb in his hometown, and immediately it just stood out. That
you dropped them all?
Yeah, well, actually, I was just in like trainers and shorts. I wasn't even close to being a pro cyclist at the time, but they were just super impressed by the speed at which I could climb, you know, with no cleats, you know, just in my casual clothes. And so it was very clear that power to weight was my big strength.
Yeah. And what do you think makes a good climber?
Well, of course, you know, power to weight is really important. So, you know, for me, it's not necessarily about the brute power that I can put out, but it's, you know, relative to my weight.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think, you know, obviously aerobic capacity is very important for the tours, for the longer climbs, whereas your anaerobic capacity is maybe a bit more for the classics, the short punchy climbs, the explosivity. To be totally honest, I'm more of a classics rider than what I am a Grand Tour rider, although, you know, maybe that's not so obvious to the general public, because I can do both pretty well. But yeah, explosivity, short punchy climbs, that's my real strength.
And when it comes to training for climbs, does all your training need to be done on a climb? So like, say if someone, you know, hasn't got a mountain on their doorstep, are there things that they can do on flat roads? I mean, for yourself, do you do literally all your climbing training on climbs?
Well, I'm really lucky because I live at the base of Rocacorba, literally. So I can do all of my training on climbs, and of course, I do pretty much choose to, because yeah, that's where my strength lies, power to weight. So when there's an incline, that's when I can, you know, get my best numbers. But actually, I've also come to learn that Zwift and indoor cycling is a really good training tool, especially for climbing. So for people who don't have access to a climb and maybe even live in a city, Zwift is the perfect thing, because yeah, you can, in the game, you can do very much what I do. You go to the bottom of Alpe d'Huez, you can do your intervals, turn your avatar around, come back down again, turn around, and go up again.
You climb Alpe d'Huez more than once in one ride?
Well, I don't know. Well, see, that's the thing. I don't necessarily go all the way to the top. So it would be like, let's say I have 10-minute FTP efforts. I would do 10 minutes, turn around, go back down again, 10 minutes up, rather than continuing to climb up the climb, because it's a bit more difficult to recover in between.
And is that something you do like out on the road as well?
Yeah, so that's what I do on the road as well. So I'm the pro that's on Rocacorba the most, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I climb all the way to the top every time.
Right, for someone like me, I have a bit of a mental block with climbing. I feel like I hit the bottom of the climb and I instantly just crawl to a stop. But how much does having the wrong gears on your bike affect climbing?
Oh, it's huge. So gear ratios are really, really important. And yeah, maybe a couple of years ago, it was always thought that, you know, the bigger the gear that you can push, the better the cyclist you are. But these days, things are leading all to efficiency. So it's way better to have more gears available and to rather be able to spin up the climb and produce power through cadence rather than, you know, really grinding the gears. So gear ratios are super crucial.
A big question now, when it comes to climbing, in or out the saddle?
Well, so for me, out the saddle, that's just my like natural way of doing things. I like to get out the saddle and dance on the pedals. But again, that could be something that's quite personal, you know, so you need to kind of figure out what works best for you, whether it's sort of seated, more sort of pushing on the pedals, or whether it's getting out the saddle and dancing. But in either way, I think it's always good to kind of practice getting a bit of variety, because once, like if your muscles start fatiguing in the saddle, then it's quite good to be able to get out the saddle and change muscles.
And is that something you do in training, like you do some efforts, you'll be in the saddle and then you'll get out? Or is it something that you just go off feel that, oh yeah, I fancy getting out of the saddle now? Or
so sometimes it's good to like do the intervals just using the incline or the changing incline of the climb to sort of guide when you get in and out of the saddle and go on feeling. But then it is also good some days to maybe have more in mind what you want to do. So to practice being out the saddle, because that's also a type of fitness, you know.
Yeah.
So for example, you know, if I've got under-over efforts where, you know, it's threshold, then bursts of explosivity, then I would usually try and be in the saddle while I'm at threshold and get out the saddle for the burst. Yeah, so it's something that it depends on kind of the session, but it is good to practice both.
Mix it up.
Yeah.
Cool. I'd also be really interested to know what goes through your head when you're approaching a climb. And for someone here who doesn't look forward to a climb, what advice would you give them to maybe simplify it?
Yeah, I think it's always about sort of trying to stay calm.
Yeah.
You know, to get that fine line between staying calm but also allowing the anxiety to build up, which creates a bit of that rush, which enables you then to go deeper, you know, when you get the adrenaline rush. But yeah, I think it's also just about, you know, taking it sort of one step at a time, especially if it's a long climb. Try not to get too caught up thinking about, you know, how long it is or how far you still have to go, but maybe sort of breaking it up into segments, you know, and ticking it off as you go along.
Yeah. I'm guessing like when you're training on the climbs, it's all done off power?
Yes.
And then when you go to racing, do you then hit a climb and be like, right, I need to do this power? Or is it sometimes, you know, it's kind of out of your control and you have to follow?
It's actually really interesting because I'm very much a person that likes to look at power and I'm really into the numbers. And so when I'm training, then yes, that's everything that I'm looking at. But when I'm racing, I'm actually not looking at all, unless I'm away. So if I'm away solo, then I would be looking at my power.
Which is all the time.
But actually, initially, it's all on feeling. So then that's also a bit of a challenge because when you're training, you do need to try and also kind of keep touch with feeling and not only be looking at the numbers. Because when it comes to racing, it's about instinct. It's about feeling, you know, the legs, the muscles, to determine, you know, if you can go any harder or whether you need to tap off. And that's also an interesting thing about climbing is that often, you know, it's about really trusting your feeling, and sometimes maybe someone might attack. And if you follow them in that moment, you're going to totally blow up.
Yeah.
So it's about having the self-discipline not to follow, but to keep ticking away. And then it is good to look at your numbers, because then if you stay at your threshold and you keep it consistently, it's possible you'll come back to them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's quite an art.
It definitely is. And another thing, pros always look so good when they're climbing. So composed and just, you know, just dancing on the pedals. Talk us through how to look good climbing?
Well, I think it's about learning how to use the bike as well. I think that people often underestimate how much the bike can actually help you to generate power. So what I mean is, like, if you're going to get out the saddle, instead of holding your bike still and bouncing from side to side, it's about learning to throw the bike with you. Because when you throw the bike and it moves with your body, it helps to create that sort of momentum as well. So I think, yeah, it's about practicing to loosen up the wrists, you know, loosen up the body a little bit, and yeah, get in tune with the bike so that you move together.
Yeah. And when it comes to eating on climbs, do you have any like rules? You go if you have to eat before? Do you ever eat on the climb when it's like a really long climb?
Yeah. So
because I mean, I try and eat and I'm like, I can't breathe and eat at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, of course, eating is really super crucial. So in racing, I'm pretty rigid in terms of, you know I need to be taking something in every 20 minutes and I stick to that. So depending on how hectic the race is or what point of the race it is, it's either gels or bars. But especially closer to the climbs, I'd say at that stage, probably moving to gels. And if you're on a climb that's going to take longer than half an hour, you certainly do need to think of, you know, putting something in at the bottom, and then maybe having another gel to pop sort of halfway through as well.
Okay, cool. What is one of your favourite climbing sessions that you do? Or if it's is it a secret? Do you have these secret sessions?
No, I suppose my favourite, well, there's two. It depends on the time of the season. It's either torque work, so that's kind of, you know, further out from the goal.
Yeah.
The torque work is more like strength work, so it's going into a really big gear and slow cadence and just grinding away, activating all the different muscles. And the reason why I like it is because I know how much it benefits me.
Yeah.
And then, you know, like getting closer to the racing, it would be more sort of priming my anaerobic engine and my strength. So then it's this under-over stuff. So, you know, being at threshold, then doing a 30-second burst, then coming back to threshold. Yeah, that's also kind of a strength of mine, so I enjoy doing it.
And the torque sessions, what cadence are we talking? How low?
So if it's a shorter effort, like a 4-minute effort, then we're talking between 40 and 50 RPM. And if it's a slightly longer effort, so let's say 10 minutes, then it would be more between 50 and 60.
Okay, and how long would you do these efforts for? So let's say the shorter ones.
So usually it would be like 6 times 4 minutes with like a 5-minute recovery in between. And if it's 10 minutes, then it would usually be like 3, maybe 4 10-minute repeats.
Yeah.
And then again, then would be like a 10-minute rest in between.
Okay. Might try that one day.
Yeah.
If I'm feeling it.
And they're also really good to do on Zwift, to be honest.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So Zwift is almost always a bit more torque-based than real-life riding, because you're working against the unnatural resistance of the smart trainer. So yeah, to do the torque work on Zwift is also super beneficial.
And finally, for someone who wants to improve their climbing, what 3 tips would you give to them?
Well, firstly, gear ratios. So making sure that you have enough gears.
Yeah.
That's really important. Then I'd say like consistency. You need to go out there and consistently be doing some efforts on a climb so that you get used to it and you can develop your style. And then thirdly, I would say it's about learning how to, you know, use your bike, you know, so getting the feeling for allowing the bike to move with you so that you can be one with your bike.
Yeah. I was also wondering, Ashleigh, is there anything off the bike you can do to improve your climbing, or is it all kind of needs to be done on the bike?
No, I mean, of course, most of it is done on the bike, but core work is always good for all aspects of cycling, but in particular for climbing, you know, especially when you're getting out of the saddle and you're trying to get all the power out of your legs, you know, having a strong, stable core is really good. So yeah, for me, it's more of like a Pilates yoga combination is usually what I do.
And is that something that you include in your training weekly?
Yeah, obviously in the off season can maybe be a little bit more aggressive about doing it. So maybe try to grow a little bit in strength, and maybe then it's 2 to 3 times a week. But in race season, then it would be more like maintenance, and probably more of a focus on yoga rather than hardcore Pilates. And then it's usually once or twice a week. Okay, Manon, well, it's been really great chatting, but I think I better get going with my intervals.
Okay.
Hop on my wheel. Let's go.
I think I might give that one a miss, Ashleigh. Yeah, there's no chance of me keeping up with her. See ya. Yeah, I think I'll let Ashleigh do those intervals on her own. I don't want to get in the way of her training. But just want to say a massive thank you to Ashleigh for coming out and giving us some of her best climbing tips. Hopefully you've learned a lot from this video, but let me know down in the comment section below if you did enjoy, and remember to check out some of our other videos on the channel where Ashleigh will be featuring. I think I'll roll. I might go downhill now. I'll let Ashleigh do her thing.